Good afternoon, Luis. We still have 6 minutes until everyone shows, so we'll hang here. Oscar Gonzalez, I went back and forth with the new student chapter president, and I've got his information. We're adding him to the All Apex link, and we're going to add him into the WhatsApp so that he gets all of the board information.
Sorry, Chester, I was getting some food. So what was that?
I got in touch with Mr. Quinones, the new president of the student chapter. And I got his information, and Rodney is putting him into the WhatsApp so that he's linked there and into the mail list so that All Apex will reach him as well.
All right. Yeah, I'll reach out to him as well.
Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Thank you.
He's ready to get started.
All right. I'll give him a call either today or tomorrow.
Okay. Terrific. Thank you.
Perfect.
Don't forget, we've got a board meeting next Wednesday.
Yes. Have it here in my calendar.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Just a couple more minutes and we'll get started. Good afternoon, Eva. Carmen, good to see you.
Hello.
Okay, it is 12:15, time for us to get started. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the bullwhip effect, but first, welcome, Happy New Year. Uh, this is our first Apex for Lunch of 2022, and this is our third year of having Apex for Lunch. So welcome, and we'll see if we can have another bang up year. Start with the pandemic information. I did this slide differently this time. Those of you who've been before, usually I have all of the updated information, but what I wanted to do with this one, and you'll notice down in the left-hand corner, the number of COVID cases is at 314 million. Deanna updated her slides after I updated my slides. And when I did mine in the morning, it was 312 million. So you can see that number is going up very quickly. Between November, when we had 254 million, to this week in January, second week in January, we've added about 60 million, so that's about 25% worldwide. The deaths have only gone up 0.4 million only. Probably a bad use of words, but the death rate is not accelerating the way the infection rate is. And you look only at the US, we went from 47 million to 62 million, which is roughly 15 million. And that's just under a third or 30% increase in just 2 months. So the Omicron variant has really spiked the numbers. Those of you that are working through this and have people reporting to you are probably better aware than some of us who sort of live in isolation. Deaths went up 90,000. Infections in Mexico went up about 500,000, and their deaths went up about 9,000. Vaccinations have also gone up fairly quickly from 7.3 billion in November to 9.3 billion. So that's 2 billion more vaccinations that have been given out in just 2 months. A billion a month. At that rate, you could vaccinate everyone in the world in about 7 months. It says we've given out the same number of vaccinations, but we know that they're not fairly distributed. Some countries, the US, for example, has good access to vaccination, regardless of what you may hear in the news. But other countries do not. And we're sort of missing the boat in South America and Africa, where they're struggling. India is still struggling. India is second on infection rates in the world, second to the US. But considering that they have 3 times the population, I'm not sure exactly where we fit in that mode. Anyway, that's our feedback on the pandemic. It's impacting a lot of things, including the supply chain. An update, it looks like the ships are being unloaded and things are moving a little bit better out of LA and Long Beach. There are 18 ships at the dock as of yesterday. The fines to the carriers who let the containers sit for more than 6 days for train and 8 days for truck have been deferred. They haven't. We talked about this in November, but they haven't actually started sending out the fines yet. What happened was when they put that in place, the rate of transfer, some things happened. They started allowing trucks in and out 24 hours a day. The train companies got a little bit better at getting their cars in and getting their cars out. And so they pushed the actual date for starting to charge the fines. They pushed that out for another month. and I have a feeling that it won't happen. There are only 13 ships that are close in. That would be ships waiting at anchor or sitting somewhere very close to the harbor. But there are 89 ships that are currently en route to the port, coming out of Eastern Asia or coming up from South America. So there'll be more ships coming in, but this is sort of almost a normal kind of rotation on the products coming in. The average day's wait time for a ship coming in right now is only about 5.1 days, and that's still coming down. So things have cleared up a bit in the LA Long Beach area. That doesn't mean that we're out of the woods, but so where did all this stuff go? We had all these ships, and retail sales in December were up 11.5% over 2020. There was over $859 billion spent in the month of December in retail stores. Online, that's a combined online and physically in the stores. So it's a huge amount of material got moved into the stores and off the shelves or into the warehouses and shipped out using UPS and FedEx and getting the products out. So that end, the retail end, there aren't too many retailers running around saying, "Oh, poor us," anymore. They were all up at arms and saying, "We're not going to have a good year because we can't get the stuff," and didn't seem to be the real issue. Cars and car inventory are still down, and the price of cars is still sky high. And that goes back to the IC shortages, the chip shortages we've been talking about for probably the last 6 or 7 months. That's still a problem. The folks in Taiwan are doing everything they can to get ICs out to the auto manufacturers, but they're getting hit pretty hard right now by COVID as well. So there's a lot of labor shortage, and their output has dropped. So all in all, last year the retailers had a very good year. Consumers paid more, and even with the inflation, unit sales were up. So they actually sold more product last year or this past year than they did in years past. So the supply chain is fixed? No. Theory of constraint says there's always a constraint. It just moves. So we have, to a certain extent, relieved the constraint or the focus, our focus on constraints from the docks and getting the ships in and getting them unloaded so that the containers became available. And now we look to see, okay, what else is happening? And that brings us to the bullwhip and the bullwhip effect. Just to give you a definition, and I use the Wikipedia rather than the APICS definition, simply because I don't want to get into issues with APICS or ASCM. But the bullwhip effect is a distribution channel phenomenon in which the demand forecasts and we have supply chain, the demand forecasts yield supply chain inefficiencies. We create the problem by increasing swings in inventory in response to shifts in consumer demand as one moves further up the chain. What we see happening now is a version of this where we sort of had the demand, but then we answered that demand. There was supply, but the supply wasn't getting where we thought it needed to be, or we were hearing that it wasn't getting there in a timely way. And Now we've stopped looking at it. If you go out and look at supply chain issues, most of the listings in Google, they stopped around December 20th, and there hasn't been anything added since then. So it says that the focus has changed. But where did the constraint go in the process? And I think that what we see now is the constraint is going to be at the retail end. The market is going to be the constraint. If your capacity in your process is higher than your sales rate, then the constraint is in the market. And I think what we're seeing is as we come out of the holidays and the return cycle, so retail starts to fall back to a more normal level of activity, what we're going to see is that becomes the constraint. But we have a full supply chain. We have trucks, we have trains, we have ships that are still moving and they're still unloading, and the containers are being moved. And we're going to see an increase in the amount of inventory because it's not being delivered. So how will this work? Well, the sale's over and the consumers have returned their goods. So there are large numbers of empty containers around warehouses where they brought the containers in, they finally had room, they emptied the containers, and now the containers are sitting there empty. And the warehouses are not empty. And there are still plenty of full containers in transit via train, truck, and ship. So we're going to see more of these full containers coming in and ending up sitting in demurrage around warehouses. And that ties us back to more inbound inventory. Remember, there were extra orders placed to expedite certain products that were carried by alternate carriers. And we talked about that, if you'll remember. Kohl's and Target and the Walmart, Amazon were all using different forms of carriers or smaller ships or airplanes or other things to move freight to get the product that they wanted onto the shelves. And so they placed extra orders and expedited material through while the ships were delayed and the ship-bound freight was slow in coming. Now all of that alternate material has come, it's been delivered, and what we're seeing is the earlier orders that were delayed are still being manufactured and shipped. And those materials will continue to be unloaded and moved to warehouses until probably April or May of this year. So we're going to see this wave of inventory coming in, and it's going to fill up the warehouses again. And then we'll have warehouses with a whole lot of containers gathered around holding the extra material. And that'll take us back to container shortages again as we move into the second half of this year. So container shortages, the end of that cycle, and then the products for the spring and the summer sales will come out next. And there will be a further strain on the system. Now, most of the retail clothing retailers and those people have their orders in already for the spring material, and that is coming through. But it's going to get bounced around a little bit because they've got all of the material that they had previously ordered for Christmas that was slow in getting. So it's going to be an interesting but somewhat chaotic logistics flow for those people working with their warehouses and trying to get the product sequenced and back out to the retail stores. Purchasing managers and buyers will be trying to stop some shipments, expedite others, furthering the chaos. And it's not going to be as bad as October and November, but it's not going to be normal either. It's not going to be a normal, smooth flow. So if you've been seeing bumps and grinds in your incoming some loads seem to come faster, some loads coming slower. That's going to continue for at least the next quarter and probably for the first half of the year. There are some real shortages out there. The integrated circuits we mentioned earlier, those are still short, and that's going to be a shortage that lasts. People are saying now probably 3 years. They're bringing on 2 new chip plants here in the U.S. And those should be ready by the end of this calendar year. They're bringing on more in the Far East. China is ramping up and trying to bring on more plants, but it takes about 2 years from the time they start building the plant until they get it to a point where they can start actually making product. So it's a fairly long lead time. It's one of those engineer to order kind of things that we talk about when we're talking about how to plan our business. So there's a shortage there. There's a labor shortage, and that labor shortage is here in the U.S. We've become the resignation nation, where people have looked around and they see other things that they may be able to do for more money, and so they're leaving jobs and moving on to other jobs, and that's shifting labor around and causing labor issues. Before this all started, we were probably 50 to 80,000 truck drivers short. And since the first round of the pandemic and the holidays and everything, we're probably somewhere around 150,000 truck drivers short now. So that's impacting the movement of product around the country as well. But we're not alone. In Europe, some of the countries are shut down. Some of the countries are open and running. They're trying their best to keep manufacturing up. China has been shutting down and locking down provinces or states within their country when they see outbreaks, trying to keep the spread down. And so they've had labor problems as well. Singapore and Taiwan, Malaysia have all had labor shortages as well. So it's hitting around the world, and it comes and goes. The good news coming out of South Africa is that they've seen drops in their infection rates and in hospitalization rates. New York City this week has had its first reduction in infection rates. So, and they were the first place to really experience this newest wave. So that's coming down, and we may see some smoothing out. The labor is also impacting the food, because the people that actually process and handle the food, they're having shortages of people, and meat has been in short supply. Chicken will be next in short supply, and it's not because we don't have chickens, and it's not because we don't have beef. It's we can't get it processed because of labor shortages. So those are going to take a little bit of time to smooth out. Oil, which is leading to gas, which is why we're seeing higher gas prices, and that also impacts plastic resins. They're a derivative of crude oil. So when oil is considered short, then plastic gets impacted as well. So there'll be spot outages and spot shortages in oil-related products. And that's probably going to last into the mid-year and maybe later in the year, depending on whose forecast you look at. Some people are more bullish. The problem seems to be that OPEC has put a fixed cap on how much they're going to produce, and it's lower than what the rest of the world would like. Russia is having some issues with the rest of Europe, and so that's slowing down their output as well. And so those things coming together are impacting the availability. and the US just lets their prices rise with the global market. So even though we really don't have a shortage here, we are a net exporter of oil and oil-based products. So we're shipping more than we're buying, is what that means. And that says that we have sufficient or more than sufficient, but we go with the global pricing. So that's why our gas prices are up as well. So what can we do with all of this? How does this, what do we do with this information? Thanks for sharing all of that, Chet, but what are we going to do with it? Well, the first thing we have to do is we have to understand the impact of the bullwhip effect on your business. How is it going to impact you? Are you waiting for containers to come from the Far East? Are you waiting for containers to come from other plants within your corporation? And what's their schedule? And are they telling you that they're going to be late? Are they telling you that they're going to be on time? Are you following up and making sure? And then what's your level of stock in your warehouses? Do you have space? Have you met with your purchasing people and your inbound planners to see what they've got coming to them in the pipeline? Is that pipeline jammed? Is that pipeline empty? Where is your supply chain at this point? And each one is going to be slightly different. So this isn't something that we can sit here, there's no magic ball. You have to go out, you have to look. You have to find out from your suppliers, what are they doing? How are they working? If you're manufacturing, we're using plastic resins, you need to be on the phone and finding out what's going on there. You need to continue to improve your planning skills and your planning practices. This is a good time to go back to weekly review with your planners. And if it's not you doing the weekly review, someone in your organization should be doing weekly reviews, going over the issues, looking at and tracing out what's going on with your major suppliers, what's going on with your production, and where are you in terms of your customer service. And when you do these weekly reviews, and it takes time and it's detailed, but what we see is you get improvement, because some of us go on autopilot, and people were on autopilot in late November and all of December, and now it's January, and you need to get them off autopilot and get them back focused on making things work. Focus your energy on your raw materials planning. Raw materials and sub-assemblies and components that are coming in. Because if you have the material, then you're going to be able to do, based on what your labor is, you're going to be able to do what you need to do to support your customers. So focus there. Collaborate more closely with your supply partners. Talk to your suppliers and make sure that they understand what you're trying to do, where you are in your process, and how they can be of help. Open up those doors, get them off of autopilot as well, and make sure that they're working with you. And then review and revise your order quantities and see if you can smooth out your order profiles. This is where you look at your orders and you say, well, we've got minimum order quantities on these things. What can we do to reduce those MOQs? What do we need? And what does it look like as far as demand going forward? How is that, and how can we smooth that out so that we're not bouncing around and ordering container loads if we don't need container loads? Where are our suppliers located? Can we get suppliers that are closer to us and cut the distance down? And what's our landed cost? And this is the focus for this year, should be on what's the landed cost of material. Landed cost is the cost of the raw material, and you add in the cost of transportation, cost of customs if it comes from outside the country, the cost of time, all of those things. how much did it actually cost you to get that material on your dock or into your warehouse? And then you compare that, because if you look at unit price, you can find unit price somewhere in the world that's cheaper than what you're paying today, unit price. But how much is it going to cost you to have it on hand when you have a production order that you need to build? And that's your landed cost. So shift your focus and work on landed cost this first quarter, and it'll prove to be beneficial for the rest of the year. So here's some good news. We'll spend a couple of minutes here talking about good things that are happening out there. I love this. I love this picture. That's why I put it in. What you see here is you have scale models, of course, of Statue of Liberty and a regular ferry boat kind of thing and a major cruise ship. You've got airplanes and they're flying by the Eiffel Tower, and then you've got this thing sitting in the middle. Any guesses? This is a new design for wind power generation. Instead of having big blades, it's got a bunch of little tiny blades. So a Norwegian company called Wind Catching Systems is developing a floating multi-turbine technology for wind farms. It'll generate 5 times the annual energy of the largest single wind turbine. And it increases the efficiency by being innovative in its design, and it will change the way wind farms look and perform. So think about this. We're used to seeing those 3 blades and they slowly roll around. This thing has, and you can see them all lined up, all of those blades that are in this whole package. This thing is about 1,000 feet tall, and it's anchored to the bottom of the sea. So you don't have to have it in shallow water. You can put it out in deeper water, which means you could have a bunch of these in an area and they'll just sit there and generate electricity. The traditional wind turbines consist of 1 pole and 3 gargantuan blades. And that's what they copied from the Dutch when if you remember, probably when we went to school, or it was when I went to school, but that was before you guys went to school. They had the pictures of the windmills in Holland and the tulips. Well, that's where that whole concept came from, was the early windmills. And the wind turbines just took that and turned it into fiberglass blades that we see being manufactured in Juarez and then trucked all over or shipped by train, which is really weird to watch. But they've taken this whole idea and sort of thrown it away. They've got a square grid with over 100 small blades. It's 1,000 feet high, and it's 3 times as tall as the average wind turbine. And it's on a floating platform that's anchored to the seafloor. So what happens is it catches more wind and it has more blades to catch that wind. And so each of them generates a smaller amount, but you've got a whole lot of them in this matrix. And so this thing would be able, they're starting to build them now. They're getting the prototypes ready, and they're going to anchor them in parts of the North Sea. That means that it would be north of Germany and west of Sweden, and in that part of the North Sea. They're going to anchor them out, and then they'll have trunk cables that will come from them back to the land, and then they'll do a regular distribution of electricity from there. So they're going to do the prototype, and if they're right and everything works out, they should be able to go to all wind generation for Europe within a few years. So it's new, it's exciting technology. There'll be a whole lot of other issues that come into it, but I thought that I would share that with you and give you something pleasant at the end of this presentation, because it's been a little bit hard. So what would you like to discuss? What's causing you problems right now, your issues of concern? Give us your ideas, go to the chat box and just leave an idea or tell us what you're thinking. And we'll take that and we'll put it into our agenda for next month. This is 2022 is the 40th anniversary of the El Paso Juarez chapter of APIX. So we're going to be doing a bunch of things this year to celebrate our 40th anniversary. One of the things that we've already started talking around and about is there's a project with Microsoft to get scholarships for certification tests in Juarez. So if you're thinking about getting certified, call Deanna and talk to Deanna about it, and she'll be able to put you in touch with the appropriate people. Stay tuned. There'll be more information coming. Here's my advertisement as every time. We've got inventory and purchasing management, CPIM, planning demand and S&OP management, demand-driven planner, CSCP and CPIM. So we got a lot coming up. Make use of us. Have a great week, a great month, and I'll see you back here next month.
Thank you, Chet.
Thank you, Chet.
Welcome.
Hey, thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great week.
Hey, thank you.
You
Happy
too,
New
thank you.
Year, Chet.
Happy New Year.
You gonna invite those of us who are with or who started the membership? This is Patricia, you know.
Yep, we'll invite you.
A bottle of Dom Perignon is, you know.
I'm there. I'll even think about sharing.
Oh, hey, that'd be good, okay? Have a good one, and I'll see you next month, or
All
see
right.
you next month.
Next week.
Bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah. Okay. Yep.